everybody, welcome back to Study with Cree. If you're new here, I am so happy that you're here and that we are going to be learning and growing together. If you are preparing for the NCE, then you are in the right place. So I've created this new series called the NCE Prep Series, where we are going to be prepping for the NCE. We're going to start out with counseling and helping relationships. And we're going to talk about the major content areas that show up on the exam in a way that's simple, that's practical, and that's hopefully easy to remember. So today, we're going to start with one of the most important foundations of counseling, which is counseling and helping relationships. So before we get started, I do want to remind you, like I do in all my videos, that this presentation is just for educational purposes only. Always, always, always verify information using multiple credible sources and use this material as a supplement to your own studying and your own supervision. All right, let's jump in and happy studying. When it comes to the NCE, the counseling and helping relationships domain focuses on how the counselors build and how the counselors maintain effective therapeutic relationships. The exam is looking for your understanding, of things like the therapeutic alliance, the core conditions of counseling, the stages of the counseling process, and also concepts like transference and countertransference, multicultural competence, and also professional and ethical boundaries. These concepts show up across many different questions on the exam because they represent the core of what counseling actually is. At the heart of effective counseling is the therapeutic relationship. This relationship is built on trust, rapport, collaboration, and also emotional safety. Research in counseling consistently shows that one of the strongest predictors of positive outcomes in therapy is the quality of the therapeutic alliance between the counselor and the client. So when you're answering questions on the NCE, if you're unsure which factor leads to successful counseling outcomes, the safest answer is often the strength of the therapeutic relationship. So that's a little exam hint. One theory that tends to show up pretty often on the NCE is person-centered therapy, and it is developed by Carl Rogers. A little history about Rogers: he believed that people naturally move towards growth and healing when the right conditions are present in the counseling relationship. He identified 3 core conditions that counselors should provide. Take a guess at what they are. Say it with me. Empathy, unconditional positive regard, and congruence, which is sometimes described as genuineness or authenticity. When you see exam questions describing a counselor reflecting feelings, showing warmth, or creating a non-judgmental environment, that's usually pointing towards person-centered therapy. Another concept you'll see on the exam more than likely is the stages of the counseling relationship. The first stage we have listed here is the initial stage, where the counselor builds rapport with the client, gathers information, and establishes goals. The second stage is the working stage. This is where most of the therapeutic work happens. Counselors explore patterns, introduce interventions, and help clients develop insight and coping strategies. The final stage is termination. In this stage, the counselor and client review progress, discuss what has been learned, and prepare for the end of counseling. So we're going to start with transference, and then after this we'll talk about countertransference. I thought it was pretty important to mention both, but also have them in 2 separate slides because I want to make sure that you understand the differences between the two. So let's talk about transference. Transference usually occurs when a client unconsciously redirects feelings or expectations from past relationships onto the counselor. So transference is when the client unconsciously redirects feelings or expectations from past relationships onto the counselor. An example would be A client may begin to view the counselor as a parent figure, authority figure, or someone from their past. Understanding transference can help clients recognize patterns and how clients relate to others and work through unresolved emotional experiences. Now we're going to talk about countertransference. Before we get into it, I will let you pause this video and take a guess on what countertransference is. Since we already discussed transference, what do you believe countertransference is? Okay, let's get into it. Countertransference is similar, but it happens on the counselor side. This occurs when the counselor projects their own feelings, personal experiences, or unresolved issues onto the client. For example, a counselor may feel unusually irritated, protective, or emotionally reactive towards a client because the client reminds them of someone in their own life. When this happens, usually the best professional response is to increase self-awareness and seek consultation or supervision when necessary. Another very important concept in counseling relationships is multicultural competence, and more than likely you will see a question or two about multicultural competence on your exam. Effective counselors need to be aware of their own cultural background and biases, understanding the cultural experiences of their clients, and develop the skills needed to provide culturally responsive care. Multicultural competence is often described as having 3 components. Those components are, say it with me, awareness, knowledge, and skills. On the NCE, questions related to culture often focus on recognizing when counselors need to consider a client's cultural background before applying interventions. Ethical and professional boundaries are also a very important part of helping relationships. Counselors must maintain professional roles and avoid situations that could create dual relationships or conflicts of interest. For example, entering into friendships, business relationships, or other non-professional roles with clients can blur boundaries and potentially harm the counseling relationship. Sorry, my dog is having a drink of water. The American Counseling Association Code of Ethics provides guidance to help counselors maintain these professional boundaries. When in doubt, reference the ACA Code of Ethics. I actually keep a copy of it somewhere close to me, especially my practicum site, when I feel like I want to look for extra information or clarify things for myself. I mean, my supervisor is very helpful, and I hope that you have one that's just as helpful, but it's really good practice to know where these things are, to reference them just in case you need them. To review what we covered today, here are a few quick practice questions. First, what is one of the strongest predictors of successful counseling outcomes? Second, if a counselor feels irritated towards a client because the client reminds them of their sibling, which concept does that represent? And third, during which stage of counseling do the counselor and client review progress and prepare for the end of therapy? If you answered in this order, therapeutic alliance, countertransference, and termination stage, you're on the right track. And that wraps up our introduction to counseling and helping relationships for the NCE. Understanding these foundational concepts will help you answer many different types of exam questions and also strengthen your skills as a future counselor. If you found this helpful, make sure to save this video for your study sessions and stay tuned for the next episodes in this series where we'll cover group counseling and group dynamics and more. Thanks for studying with me, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.